Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. We wanted to start off this morning just by thanking everyone for coming out, especially given the events of earlier this week. We know that nobody was compelled to be here by their boss. It wasn't a professional obligation, and it's clear that everybody who's here this morning wasn't too drunk last night and considers it a great privilege, as we do, to come and kind of represent insurance and InsureTech. And so we're going to do our fireside chat with Benoît from AXA. Why don't you start off by telling us about AXA for the investors of the audience who have never heard of them?
So for those of you who are not familiar with us, actually it's a story that could echo maybe the ambition of many startups in that room. 30 years ago, in 1985 precisely, AXA was a small mutual regional French firm which had the ambition, thanks to its founder, to become one day one of the global leaders. And today we are one of those. We are present in 67 countries in all types of lines of business in insurance. And we have 107 million clients, and we have a total turnover above 100 billion euros.
Okay, big company, big startup. So I understand that your current role is the Chief Transformation Officer at AXA, and previously you had been the Executive Chairman of the for France at the International Monetary Fund during the financial crisis. I guess the question that comes to my mind is, which one is worse?
Okay, Ruth. I really like the tone this discussion is starting with. So indeed, I was at the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, during the time of the global crisis. And as some of you may remember, maybe not of those who are the youngest in that room, it has been a tough one. And this is where I was convinced after that I wanted to be in an industry that contributes to the welfare of the people. And this is where my path crossed those of the leaders of AXA. Mm-hmm. And long story short, it was a Friday morning, 7:15. I was compelled by their vision. And I signed. I didn't know what I was going to do, neither how much I would be paid. I repatriated my family from the US, moved back to France. And I was convinced by this vision that that kind of company can make a difference in the society or that kind of industry. We have a vision that we said is to empower people to live better lives. We believe that there is much more to give to the clients than just the insurance coverage. It's about providing new services. It's about building new business models. And for those in this room who are in the 40% of incumbent, we know that for that to happen in 2017, we need to transform our engine. Okay. And this is why I have in my remit technology, data, distribution, operations, and efficiency. Because this is the core of what we have to transform if we want to, as I said, empower people to live better lives. And we used to say internally that we have three mottos: is to become simpler in the way we distribute and operate, is to become smarter in the way we leverage data, and it's to become faster to leverage technology and digital to deliver faster to our clients.
Okay, I think eventually it will be interesting to talk about the different components of your kind of transformation protocols and places that startups fit into that scene. You know, how startups come and work with you. How do they come into contact with AXA? Is InsureTech, you know, grown outside of AXA part of your remit and part of your ambition to bring inside, or is this something that you think that you guys are going to do and transform on your own?
I think that we have gone a long way in the past years. I think that I'm sure that many big corporations in that room would have the same rationale. I think for years it has been, and for decades actually, it has been a race to scale. Okay, so the bigger you could get and faster and further than the others, you would reach that point where you have the economies of scale and therefore the competitive advantage. And I would say in the recent past, we've seen that with the pace of innovation going out there, it had become quite impossible to do it solely on our own. We are either too expensive or too slow, or we lack the skills and capabilities to embrace the whole diversity of innovation that is going out there. To draw an analogy, and maybe it would echo with what we're doing here at InsureTech Connect, I would say for years the strategy was about building fortresses to conquer territories. But when the real power lies into the trade of knowledge, of data, you need to build marketplace, you need to build innovation, you need to build agora. And this is where you need to build partnership with those who are outside. And we do it with startups, but we also do it with big other firms, because I think that everyone now is convinced that this is how it works.
And so you've, over the course of your career, you've worked in Asia, you've worked in Africa, the Caribbean, the US, obviously in Europe, you're European, you're French. And I'm wondering, we've seen pretty, I would say, broad representation amongst certainly the startups who are here today, and perhaps some of the investors are this week. Do you see InsureTech as being something that you can paint with a pretty broad brush and sort of describe broadly, or do you believe that there are significant regional differences in InsureTech and perhaps in insurance?
I think there is indeed significant difference. I would say the core is the same in terms of what is the technology, for instance, at stake, but the way it manifests itself varies from geography to geography in terms of investment, customer adoption, or regulation. So you're right, for the past years I was running our life business in Asia, and I could see the amount of investment that is going toward that region. For instance, last year, if you take just the fintech investments, 56% of them worldwide went to the Asia-Pacific region. And China accounted for 88% of those. I was talking about the customer behavior. If you take the top 20 countries in the world in terms of what do the digitally active clients, what proportion of digitally active clients use fintech every day, for the top 20 countries in the world, that number would be 33%. In China, it's 69%. And finally, on regulation, I think that Caribou mentioned yesterday on stage the IPO of Zhong'an, which is a massive success. It was well known on the market that the Hong Kong regulator and the Hong Kong supervisor was ready to do a lot to make sure that this IPO takes place in Hong Kong. In the same breath, Singapore has decided to be the marketplace for fintech and insuretech for the coming years. So there is a huge competition at stake here, and I think that we would be narrow to only look at one geography and not to see what's going on in the rest of the world.
So are you actively looking in Asia for insuretechs to partner with?
Absolutely.
You going to buy any?
The issue of maybe that's one of the elephant in the room of that question, but this issue of the valuation is one of the key questions at the moment. We have our own venture capitalist fund. Okay, it's called AXA Strategic Ventures. It's a $275 million US fund, and we regularly we acquire stakes in companies. But it's true that we are extremely careful because we believe that too often the valuation that we see on the markets actually do not match with our own metrics. We have a simple constraint as insurers. We have liability. We have long-term commitments with our clients. We have clients who give us their pension. So we have to make sure that 30 years from now, 40 years from now, we can pay them what we owe them. So we are very careful when it comes to making acquisition and making sure that it's profitable in the end.
So you would say that incumbent insurers in general are viewing acquisition opportunities in terms of the old metrics of the M&A, the traditional M&A activities, and that's preventing considering acquisition. As an investor, I think this is something that I am very concerned about and don't frankly see enough of in the fintech space. And I wonder if you think that insurers are going to warm to being buyers at sort of tech valuations at some point and recognize the value of the tech? Or do you think that we're going to remain entrenched in the kind of M&A view?
You know, I mean, in the end, it's a very basic rule. Huh? You have your own P/E ratio when you're a listed company, and there is so much that you can invest in terms of valuation. The markets will not understand that when you are valued at a certain amount of P/E ratio, you invest in companies which are totally different. The second reason why we are careful when we do that kind of acquisition, again, is one thing is to acquire a company, another thing is to have it successful within your own organization. And often we find very good solutions, very good technological solutions, but we have to think twice before integrating them and see if it's going to deliver the value that we expect. If we believe it's not going to deliver the value, then there is no point in making the acquisition.
At the same time, I would imagine that part of your remit is to transform the culture. So the way tech companies have sort of looked at this acqui-hire opportunity, you don't see that happening so much in insurance as sort of culture-changing opportunities.
I think there is a difference. I mean, here, as you were talking about the geographies before, we see a difference, for instance, between maybe the fintech of Europe and the US and in Asia. Mm-hmm. When we talk with fintech in Asia, they don't want to be bought out. The discussion we have with them is really around how do we partner, potentially how we could do JVs, if it makes sense, joint ventures, but they don't want to be bought out. So they bring this long-term perspective, which is very much aligned with our own culture. Now, back to the culture question, still, we have realized that our culture sometimes was not close enough to the one of the fintech startups. So this is why we built an ecosystem at AXA to make sure that we permanently understand this culture and how we have to adapt ourselves. We have labs in San Francisco, in Shanghai, to learn the ecosystem, the local ecosystem. We have the strategic venture fund, I talked about it. And we also have our own startup studio internally. So we also have that place where those who want to create a business can build it within AXA.
And so what are you building? What's important? Where do you think emerging tech has something to say about insurance in a sort of like hot or not way? And I guess the flip side of that question is where is it kind of a don't believe the hype sort of moment? What do you think is overhyped, or what trends do you think are not really going to fly?
So it's one of the most difficult questions. But I would say the way we look at it is, again, it's how you put that innovation within the overall ecosystem of the global business of a multinational. I mean, it's well known that many years ago, it was all about you have an insurance solution and you adapt it to put it on online or mobile. Then it was the phase where it was, how can I leverage technology and data to upgrade the existing insurance solutions, how you better customize, how you better apprehend the customer's behaviors, and so on and so forth. Now we're entering the most somehow fascinating phase where we try to embed technology at the core of the insurance solution. Let me give you a very practical example, and it will tackle the question of the blockchain, which is one of the questions that we discussed yesterday, whether it's too hyped or not. We have launched recently at AXA a flight delay insurance solution called Fizzy. And it's a blockchain solution. The way we have designed it, we would not have designed it this way 2 or 3 years ago. Here, the remit that we gave to the team was really around, here, look at this. This is blockchain. Find us, a solution that we do not cover today, a need that we do not cover, using that technology, and start from scratch building the insurance solution, taking into account that technology. And this is how we came up with that solution, and it's a real innovation in the way we handle it, because it's a fully automated parametric insurance that does not rely at all on any decision on our side. So this is a very simple example to see that a general question about whether or not it's too hype, you can solve it in a very practical way.
Okay, so blockchain is hyped and not hyped? Or it has something to say and it doesn't? I want to know, like autonomous vehicles, for example. artificial intelligence. What is AXA's approach to these trends? Do you think that they have value for your business?
But one last word on blockchain. Look at what's going on in China. Blockchain is a reality in many instances in China. There are solutions that goes with invoices which are fully automated between different operators in the industry. So one thing that we could think is overhyped here is not overhyped there. Autonomous vehicle. I think there was a brilliant session yesterday morning on that topic. We too all agree that there will be a moment for autonomous vehicle. The date somehow doesn't matter that much, but it's going to happen in our lifetime. Maybe the babies who are born today will never have to learn to drive. The key question that we have as an industry is, what are the rules that we're going to put in place to ensure that? So what does it mean? Who is liable if there is an accident tomorrow with an autonomous car? And I think that there are going to be simple principles to be defined, and in which, for instance, we believe when it's going to be a fully autonomous vehicle, the car manufacturer will be liable. So it means that we will have to define as an industry, hand in hand with the regulators, what are, for instance, the standards for the vehicle behaviors. We will have to be very strict on the usage of the data of the people. As European, as you may know, we have this regulation called the General Data Protection Regulation. We believe that tomorrow's owner of the autonomous vehicle should have the right to decide whether or not he or she shares the data on his vehicle. And there are many other things that we have to think through. And therefore, it's not going to be a question about whether it's too hype or not. It's going to happen. We have to prepare it. Same for artificial intelligence. Everyone sees the incredible potential of this. And in the way we handle our clients, by using chatbots, we clearly see that there is here a role for artificial intelligence. But maybe here it's a word for the startups that are in that room. Maybe too often we see too many startups coming with solutions which are always with artificial intelligence. Sometimes it's too much. Sometimes you don't need to put artificial intelligence on any solution. For all the big firms that are here, and it was well described by the colleagues from Oliver Wyman yesterday, we have huge issues of efficiency of our processes. And sometimes it makes more sense to invest on rationalizing our processes, our existing processes, rather than putting artificial intelligence. To put it ironically, there is no point in putting artificial intelligence on a stupid process. So we also need to work on that.
So where are you guys playing offense? Where are you playing defense? Or what is it? What are you prioritizing in terms of your transformation agenda?
There is only one person who can tell us what the priority is, and that person is the client. So whatever that we do, whatever options that we consider, the ultimate judge is the client. If the client wants a solution, we have to be capable of providing it to him or her. If he doesn't want this one, we have to change our offer. And it's as simple as that. And sometimes, for big organizations, it's a bit difficult because the client is far, far away from our internal processes, and therefore it requires a lot of discipline to make sure that we truly focus on that.
So looking around the room and knowing that there are like more than 3,000 people at this event, right? Maybe 40% of them want to put you out of business, give or take. How does that make you feel? What do you say to the kind of disruptors?
The truth is, I think there are more than 40% who want to put us out of business. Because if you add the incumbents, it's 80%.
I thought about that, yeah, sorry.
So I'm talking to the remaining 20% investors, bet on us. But joke aside, as I said at the beginning, I think we all have understood that it was about partnership. We all have understood that you are not the smartest on your own. You are not the fastest on your own. It's all about building partnership. Let me give you two simple examples. One is we developed recently a private cloud solution at AXA worldwide. It's a major technological decision. It's a $250 million US investment. We've tried twice to do it on our own. The third time, we went with IBM because we realized that they were the best partners to do it. Also, there are many things on which today I would welcome innovation from the startups. If I take one example, compliance. Compliance for everyone who is in that room, be the regulator, be the insurance, maybe the banks, or anyone who's here, is one of our biggest challenge. It's mandatory and it's normal. We have to be compliant. But it has changed so much, and especially because in the aftermath of the global financial crisis, it has changed so much the way we interact with our client that somehow it has made the whole insurance sales process, if you will, not disrupted, but damaged. So everyone in this room who's been in a sales process know how it works. It's about having an interview, and at the end of the interview, either on a paper or on an iPad or whatever, you have to write down again all the questions you said. What's your name? Ruth. Where do you live? That city. When were you born? And so on and so forth. I think that today, with the capabilities of the technological solutions you have talked about earlier, we dream of a speech-to-text solution that would give back the discussion of the sales to what it was or what it should be. Imagine a device that would help you and I having that very conversation so that at the end of the process, the machine has populated the template and has put, because you've told me your name, the name is already on the paper. Because you've told me the name of your partner, it's on the paper, and so on and so forth. This is the kind of innovation which I think would be a major breakthrough for all financial institutions, not only the insurance companies, but as well the banks.
You're getting mobbed after this, man. You better go out the back door. Anyone in the room who's working on that, you know. So what are the structures in place at AXA for someone who has such a solution or other things, like someone has a great idea, they know it's going to be earth-shattering and life-changing for AXA's business. What are the structures in place to take those ideas in and work with those companies? Not the IBMs of the world, because clearly you guys got that covered. But the smaller companies, the startups who are here, how do they work with you? So
I wish there was a magical number for startups. There is not. We're too big. As I said, we're in 67 countries, etc. So you cannot have one sole phone number. However, as I said, we have an ecosystem. So for instance, if you Google AXA in the Silicon Valley for San Francisco, you will find our guys in the labs who day in, day out, keep on talking to the startups. Same in Shanghai. You are interested in VC investment from us, you have AXA Strategic Ventures. You have a great idea and you believe that we could groom it internally, you have Kamet, our studio startup. I would say, and of course you have all the businesses in the countries that you can contact directly. I would say, however, that it's very important, based on our experience, that when a startup comes to us, it is very clear on what it's trying to achieve. Is it to be invested in? Is it to be bought on? Or is it to partner to develop a business together? And maybe too often, we lose time because we don't know exactly, or maybe the startup itself doesn't know exactly what it is that it has to do. To be fair to the startups in this room, on the other side, I would also encourage them, because obviously sometimes they might lose time with us. Whoever you meet with, make very clear after the first meeting or the second meeting whether that person, I would say, is serious or not. Is that person really motivated to do business with you, for instance? And therefore, does that person have a budget? Does that person have a team dedicated to develop it? To avoid people losing time going from meetings to meetings.
So you would say that there's like a checklist that a small company or an emerging tech company needs to have to kind of rationalize their approach to your business rather than the other way around?
No, I think it works both ways. But as I said, sometimes, we don't know if there is some confusion on whether these startups wants to be bought out or to develop a business. And in that kind of situation, it's not going to trigger the same strategic reflection on our side, and it's not going to mobilize the same teams.
So I think one question that jumps to my mind as we talk about these different problems are the problems in the insurance industry that startups can't solve. Are you preoccupied with those problems? What are the big topics for you? You know, emerging tech topics and non-emerging tech topics.
What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think the low interest rate environment is something that I heard a lot about when I was working with
Clearly.
your arch competitor.
No, that's a very good example. I think this is sometimes maybe overlooked from the outside, but just to put things in perspective. 17 years ago, the year 2000, to make it simple, every time we were investing 100 billion, we were getting, on average, a 7 billion return on investment. In today's era of low interest rate, we would get, between the US and Europe, between 500 million and 1.7 billion. So this huge change in the overall financial environment in which we have to operate, I would say here, as far as we know, the fintech startups have no solution. It's not a problem of technology. It's a broader issue that goes with the regulator and the financial regulation.
And would you put climate change in that category?
On climate change, I think no, I would not put climate change in that category. On climate change, I think there are many things that we can work on all together. I think that there is a convergence of interest of everyone, actually. Insurance industry, governments, NGOs, startups, of designing the right solutions to tackle that problem. And there are many, many innovations that could be contemplated and for which there is going to be a need. Last innovation we did on that perimeter was when I was in Asia. We defined parametric insurance solutions for farmers in Southeast Asian countries. The impact of climate change on those farmers is enormous. From one year to another, they can lose their harvest. So this is the kinds of places where innovate. And definitely, there are many, many other avenues of innovation that we could consider.
So I have a question about people and culture, because I assume that that is one of your objectives, is to help to change the kind of stodgy, old-fashioned culture that we associate with insurance companies. And I think, you know, for years we've heard about like, oh, we got to get Silicon Valley culture, we got to break things and learn how to fail and all this other kind of stuff. A lot of the news that's coming out of Silicon Valley for some people around culture recently has been pretty damning. And I wonder if you, in the long game, playing the long game, you guys aren't at a cultural advantage somehow in terms of like equal pay for equal work and harassment and discrimination and family benefits. And is that a way that you can attract some of this talent, which in the first instance would rather work for a tech company?
Okay, so that's a huge question. How many hours do we have for that one, Ruth?
It's keeping it interesting.
Let's try to make it on two examples. First one, culture is essential. As I said earlier, we are 165,000 at AXA. You need to find something in common when that thing in common is not language, when it's not geography, when it's not the same market. So culture matters. And I mean, it's a well-known fact that 2/3 of the transformation programs, whatever they are, fail because of the lack of attention to people. And it's not that people don't want to change. On the contrary, people want to change. People want to embrace innovation. The issue is that it puts into questions years, if not decades, of habits, of processes, of ways of compensating, which do not match with today's reality. So no wonder that it creates a lot of tension within the organization. So our work is to make sure that we empower our own people to make the right decisions. This is why in our transformation program, we say that we want to be data empowered. Because if every single manager has the data that he or she needs to make decisions and is empowered to do so, it goes a long way into giving them the agility necessary.
So what change have you made to make the people within the transformation teams data empowered?
It's a lot about training. It's a lot about changing, as I said, the way we manage people. For instance, we have designed a program for our 13,000 managers. And we started with a simple question. What is it that you need? What is it that you need to run that huge transformation? The questions they were asking were not at all those we were expecting. They told us, we need to be better equipped to manage the complexity of the organization. We need to manage the contradiction. We need to understand what is this new data world in which we have to operate. What are the new stakes in technology? Very practical questions. So for instance, we said, okay, we're going to partner with Coursera, a leading online organization for training. And we just told our people, this is it. This is free. This is for you. We started with data. Over 1 month, we had 1,400 employees who have gone through the whole Coursera data training who had been certified. We didn't ask them to do it. We didn't ask them to do it during their daytime job. They did it on their own, in the evening, in the weekends. It was a very simple testimony of how people are willing to change, provided that we give them the conditions to do it. Now, back to your other question. And I think it's an essential one. I tend to believe that no matter the size of your firm, the way you treat your employee is a simple matter of respect for the human being. So simple principles such as equal pay, whatever the gender, equal meritocracy, I think makes sense whatever the size of the organization. However, as AXA, we believe that, for instance, we have a duty to treat our employees the same way, whatever the social context of the market. So for instance, we have one single parental policy. In the case of birth, the mothers and the fathers of AXA, be there in the Philippines, in the US, or in Nigeria, will have the same duration of leave in the same conditions. Because we believe this is also how you make true one of our founding principles, which is to act as one AXA, whatever the market.
Okay. So I guess maybe a last question. I think these types of events are kind of about opportunities for serendipity, and there's sort of what you came to do and your destiny. What did you come to do? Who do you want to meet?
I have already met a lot of people. Unfortunately, not as many as I wished. I want to meet other people who see things that we don't see, whatever the field. It's people who can come and tell us, you are not looking in the right direction. Look over there, and there is this huge opportunity that you guys are missing. This is why I believe this kind of event is a fantastic one. Because I said earlier, we need those marketplaces. We need those places where people can talk to each other, be they incumbent, as you call them, or startups or investors.
I guess you probably can't answer the question about your destiny.
No, I don't take that one.
Okay. Anything else that you want to, say or see before you leave Las Vegas?
I think I have to gamble once at least before I leave.
Great. Good. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.